The world's richest man, Elon Musk.
Billionaire Elon Musk.
Elon Musk completed the takeover, which is worth more than £38 billion.
It is the worst deal in the Musk universe. Purchased for $44 billion in 2022 with the help of those banks, it has struggled to retain advertisers and lost 70% of its value, according to OneMark. It's the banks holding the bag. According to new data from PitchBook, the Twitter takeover now represents the worst buyout for banks since the 08-09 financial crisis.
2 years later, let's check on the worst deal in tech history. Firstly, we might ask ourselves, why has the valuation of Twitter plummeted from $44 billion to only $9.8 billion, according to Fidelity, one of its own investors, destroying $40+ billion in 2 years? Paradoxically, user time and user growth have been reaching all-time highs, a very strange paradox in social media economics where user growth and time are the royal metrics. And now X combined with XAI are worth more than $50 billion, making the worst deal in tech history maybe one of the best, but more on that later. Well, let's see. Firstly, Twitter's price was super inflated. Estimates suggest that the real value of Twitter at the time was between 20 to 25 billion and not 44. Firstly, Elon Musk bought Twitter at a premium, since the market cap was slightly under 40 billion when he bought it and not 44, so that's 4 little billion to start with. The main reason Elon Musk wanted to scrap the deal at the time was the fact that bots accounts were largely minimized. When acquiring Twitter, the bots accounts were found to be 20% of all users compared to 5% Twitter was reporting. Imagine at the time, Twitter counted 238 million active users. That means that Twitter underestimated bots by 35 million. Picture yourself, hard to picture I know, buying a social media platform where the number of active users is one of the most important metric for the price of the platform because that's what's monetized, just to find out that an extra 35 million users are actually bots, meaning that they're worthless at best, if not dangerous. Moreover, Twitter was stagnating and not growing compared to the competitors, struggling to convert user time into revenue. Notably, in 2020, Twitter reported a net loss of approximately $1.14 billion. That's more than $3 billion of loss per day. What an amazing healthy company. In an interview, Elon Musk basically said it was a non-profit, always flickering between profitability and loss.
In rough numbers, a normal year Twitter would do, say, let's say $4.5 billion in revenue, $4.5 billion in cost. I mean, it was really kind of like a non-profit. They'd run it at roughly break even.
So he basically acquired a money-bleeding, sub-optimized company and overpaid it by 20 billion because of these many reasons. When you look at it that way, it becomes more understandable that it has lost some valuation compared to the initial 44 billion. Then, post-acquisition, the valuation dropped even more to reach a low 9.8 billion per Fidelity's report, again, one of their own investors. And that's strange, because post-acquisition, the number of total user time on the platform actually grew instead of stagnating like it was in the past few years. And here on these metrics, when you look at the internet, traditional media all say that X lost some users, that there is a mass exodus from the platform. But then X's CEO Linda Yaccarino says otherwise. The internal data is actually reporting more user minutes and frequent all-time highs of usage. So I'll trust the people that have the internal data, don't blame me. But at the end what happened is simply advertising boycotts. A large portion of advertisers boycotted Twitter for concerns over content regulation, a boycott that isn't very data-driven but more ideologic.
Particularly around hate speech.
Well, what hate speech are you talking about? I mean, you use Twitter.
Right.
Do you see a rise in hate speech?
Personally, my For You, I would see I get more of that kind of content, yeah.
Can you name one example?
I honestly don't need... honestly, I
You
don't...
can't name a single example.
I'll tell you...
You said you've seen more hateful content, but you can't name a single example, not even one.
I'm not sure I've used that feed for the last 3 or 4 weeks, and
Well, then how did you see the hateful content?
Considering his engagement in politics that are not really aligned with woke corporations, if you know what I mean. These two effects, the initial overinflated price plus advertisement boycott, reduced Twitter's valuation by a small 78% from 44 to $9.8 billion. But now the upside, the good news. XAI's valuation is reported to be at a staggering 50 billion after a financing round in November. Just to put it into perspective, the last financing round was in May for 26 billion. So a nice little progression in valuation if you ask me. And you might say, yeah, but X and XAI are completely different entities. And I would say that you're wrong. Because even if there are differences, like they're not the same company, XAI wouldn't have this valuation without X, since the main strength of XAI is having access to X's data in real time. And X's 600 million users are already on the platform that can test and grow Grok way faster than starting from nothing. So you had to acquire X in order to create a potential AI like XAI that is symbiotic with X's data, therefore leading to that immense valuation. The X data is super valuable because top CEOs, scientists, politicians post their research, new ideas, etc. on X. So considering this, you have to see X and XAI as symbiotic, and therefore kinda count it into X valuation, since X is a precondition for the existence of XAI, meaning that 2 years post-acquisition, that whole thing is now worth more than 50 billion and growing rapidly. Isn't it amazing? Now, I personally am an optimist, and very much so. Therefore, I might be a little too excited, but I think that it will turn out great. And it's a funny outcome considering that most medias were basically saying that X would go bankrupt and disappear. But what is truly cool is that Elon Musk wants X to become the everything app, like WeChat in China. If he pulls that off, it will be worth way more than the hyperinflated $44 billion that he paid for it. And we see that the metrics are growing on X, more users, more user minutes, etc. So that whole deal wasn't that bad after all. And the progress we're seeing is just the beginning. Trust me, I have an AI crystal ball. If X now integrates an email platform, a bank, an ability to call people, etc, etc, all of that working with advanced AI, who knows what the future will look like? In conclusion, I think that it was a bad deal in some aspects because the price was way too high. But that said, despite the initial start, X and XAI are on a really good path to become way bigger than $44 billion. I'm putting a lot of crazy prediction out there on this channel, like the fact that Tesla will be worth $20 trillion. But let's see if I'm right in 1 or 2 decades. I'll look back on these videos and see if I was completely delusional or if I had a great sense of analysis, let's say. Anyways, have a good day and see you soon, I hope. Bye bye, subscribe please.